Hey, hey, hey. Happy Tuesday. Come on in. Pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, incredibly enough, thegaminggang.com, which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. So welcome aboard. Today is Tuesday, June 28th, 2022. This is live stream 805. If this is your, well, as I bump the mic, thankfully it's on a shock mount, so you probably didn't hear anything when I bumped it. If it wasn't, it'd be like, blah, 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 blah. If this is your first time joining me, as you can see, it's super casual, just hanging around talking about the latest in tabletop gaming news, and then taking a peek at a tabletop game. So all month long has been the fantasy role-playing game celebration here at the Dispatch, and tonight is no different. In fact, all week long, all week long, we're taking a look at Castles and Crusades from Troll Lord Games. Tonight, we are going to dive on into the Castle Keepers Guide. So we are going to be taking a peek at this in just a bit. So if you're not familiar with this stream, do want to point out we always tackle the tabletop gaming news first, and then we move on to the game. So if you're watching live, kick back, put your feet up, relax. We'll get to the Castle Keepers Guide in probably about 30 minutes or so. If you are watching 30 minutes or more after this stream ends, you can actually utilize the timestamps and skip past the tabletop gaming news if you would like. Although there's some pretty cool stuff tonight. And of course, depending on the device you might happen to be using, those timestamps might actually be right in the time code. What am I talking about? Right in the timeline. What am I cracking up? In the timeline of the video as you're watching on the screen, there's something on my eyelid that's kind of like throwing me off a little bit. There we go. Got it. As I had mentioned yesterday, there's a little fuzz and stuff like that floating around down here past couple of nights. It's kind of weird. You may not necessarily see it on camera, but I can see him kind of drifting on past. Weird. Maybe they're ghosts. Maybe I should get the BuzzFeed Unsolved team in here. Anyway, don't forget, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Also, this is a live stream, so there's chat available. It's not on screen. It's one of the ways that I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. But if you want to say howdy, maybe you've got a question, a comment, by all means, chime in. I will do my best to respond. Should also mention you must be a subscriber to the channel for at least 48 hours in order to take part in chat. It's yet another way that I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. So first out the gate tonight is Mr. Eddie T, 245 Trioxins with us, and Sarah D is chiming in. Flaming Huron is just popped on in as well. So 3 of our 4 chat moderators are here in chat already. Our fourth, the Madman, is on vacation, so we won't see the Madman pop in for another week or so. Anyway, so hopefully everybody's having a great Tuesday night. I'm kicking back. I'm going to take a look at yet another Castles and Crusades book that I am excited to take a peek at. This is just a system that I'm really interested in. And as we take a peek through the Castle Keepers guide tonight, I'll kind of discuss a little bit about what's kind of caught my eye and what I've heard kind of through the grapevine over the years about C&C. All right, so let's jump on into the news, because making its way into stores right now is Super Fantasy Brawl. Here's a scoop from Mythic Games. In the land of Fabulosa, powerful magics have rendered war obsolete. Wish that was true. With nothing else to compete for, the bored populace has turned to the Super Brawl for entertainment. These same powerful magics are now used to reach back into the timelines to pluck out the finest warriors from every civilization in order to compete against each other in the greatest entertainment spectacle ever staged. Take that, Super Bowl. Super Fantasy Brawl is a fun, fast-paced, competitive miniatures board game. Players select a team of 3 champions and combine their unique action cards to create a synergistic action deck. The game is faction-free, so players have the choice of any combination of champions they wish. Each turn, the players use their hand of action cards to maneuver, attack, displace enemies, and claim objectives to score victory points. As the wizards who oversee the Super Brawl ensure that all champions are returned back to their timeline unharmed and unaware, champions cannot be killed. Instead, a champion who is taken out returns to the field of play, whilst the champion who delivered the blow is leveled up to an even more powerful version of themselves. But if your leveled up champion is taken out, then it returns the action reset back to its less powerful version. Every action card in Super Fantasy Brawl is attributed to one of the 3 cores which govern all magic in Fabulosa: creation, destruction, and manipulation. Each turn, players may play up to 1 action card of each core. Doing so exhausts their connection to that core until the end of the turn, when their hand will be replenished and the cores readied. The objectives in Super Fantasy Brawl are only scored at the beginning of a player's turn, ensuring that you always get a chance to disrupt your enemy's plans and position your champions to score the objective for yourself. This tactical to and fro continues until one player reaches the victory point threshold, declaring themselves the winner and advancing toward victory in the Super Brawl tournament. Super Fantasy Brawl also offers 2v2 mode for 4 players to clash in an all-out melee mashup. The core set for Super Fantasy Brawl is for 2 or 4 players, ages 14 and up, plays around 30 to 40 minutes, carries an MSRP of $45. There are a whole bunch of expansions that are out for this as well to really give you way more champions to utilize. I got to be honest, though, there was a Kickstarter for this. And in the Kickstarter, the core game was like $125. So I'm kind of curious if this $45 retail edition doesn't have miniatures. I could not see if that was the case, because it's kind of hard to track down any photos of the retail version of this game outside of what you're seeing right now, which is the box. So I don't know. Kind of weird. Kind of strange. But I got to say, the character models look pretty cool. So I thought, I ran across this. I think I'll share it. Kathy Evans and Christopher Rush are here with us in chat. Welcome aboard. Let's move on to our next news piece, because arriving in October is the historical board game Fire and Stone Siege of Vienna 1683. And here's the latest from Capstone Games. A 100,000 strong Ottoman army arrives outside the Habsburg capital of Vienna. Inside the city, 12,000 infantry, a city militia, and citizen soldiers mount a desperate defense. As the Ottoman siege lines draw closer to the city walls, the outnumbered Viennese cling to the faint hope a relief force will arrive in time to save them. For both sides, the real battle is a race against time. Fire and Stone Siege of Vienna 1683 places you in one of the most dramatic sieges in history. With a completely different set of cards for each player, you'll conduct deadly assaults against impenetrable fortifications, dig tunnels packed with explosives, and launch desperate attacks to delay your enemy's advance. Or you can play powerful events with the power to change the course of the battle. It also includes historical notes about the siege and 17th century siege warfare, although knowledge is not required to play the game. Fire and Stone Siege of Vienna 1683 is for 2 players, ages 14 and up, plays in 60 to 90 minutes. It's going to carry an MSRP of $49.95. If you order directly from Capstone Games, you will receive 2 exclusive tactics cards that you can't get anywhere else. Interesting. I kind of have the impression that this sort of uses the core mechanics of the Capstone Games title Watergate, because I believe it is a card-driven game. Each side has asymmetrical cards. So kind of interesting. And this is a very interesting topic because this was actually a turning point in the history of Europe. If you're not familiar with this siege, you might want to go wiki it or take a peek at a, I don't know, encyclopedia or something like that. It's very, very interesting. In fact, if I remember correctly, I think the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, which at this point is Leopold I, if I remember right, he's actually trapped in the city of Vienna with all these other citizens. So, yeah, check it out. This looks like it could be kind of interesting. I'm going to see about doing an interview with the fine folks over at Capstone Games at Gen Con, and I will definitely look to chat about this because it does look pretty interesting. I doubt if this is going to be a Gen Con pre-release because it hits retail in October. That's a little out there. Flaming Heron points out that he highly doubts that Super Fantasy Brawl includes miniatures for the $45. Yeah, it's weird. Like I said, I couldn't find any pictures with anything with standees or anything like that. It was kind of bizarre. Even taking a peek on Board Game Geek, nothing. All right. On to some role-playing game news, because now available from Chaosium Inc. is the highly anticipated Call of Cthulhu 40th Anniversary Starter Set. Here's the deets. Horror, mystery, and investigation in a box. The Call of Cthulhu Starter Set contains everything you need to play the world's best role-playing game of horror, mystery, and investigation. The Call of Cthulhu Starter Set contains books, dice, pre-made character sheets, maps, and enough content to keep a group busy for several role-playing sessions. That's no joke. That is completely true. This updated starter set also includes new box art, updated interior book cover designs with new artwork, and all the errata and corrections that were needed for the original starter set, as well as 40th anniversary investigator sheets. You'll find 3 softcover manuals broken into rules and scenarios to guide you in playing Call of Cthulhu. The box also includes all the dice you need to play the game. Got to be honest. You need more than one D6, in my opinion. It's just me. A D4, D6, D8, D20, a percentile D10, and an extra D10 in a different color to use as a bonus / penalty die. You can learn to play the best way possible by playing. The special introduction, Alone Against the Flames, is a solo Call of Cthulhu scenario, and it teaches you the basic rules of the game and character creation as you find yourself in the rural New England town of Emberhead. But can you escape? There's also 3 scenarios designed for 3, 4, and even up to 5 players. In Paper Chase, the search for a missing professor leads to a grisly discovery. Yeah, I don't know how grisly Paper Chase really is, to be honest. It's a good adventure. It's a nice introductory adventure. It's got a nice twist. I don't know if it's grisly. Edge of Darkness sees a group of investigators fulfill the wish of a dying friend and attempt to undo the mistakes of the past. Finally, in Dead Man Stomp, Harlem and jazz music serve as a backdrop to the nefarious schemes of an alien god. Spoiler alert, it's Nyarlathotep. Also includes player aids because they're an essential component to Call of Cthulhu gameplay. Each scenario has its own collection of maps, notes, and player handouts. Each is presented in full color. These play aids will enhance your gameplay, no doubt about that, and help your players immerse themselves in each of the investigations. Got to be honest, Call of Cthulhu really benefits from handouts. It really does add a major element to the game. The Call of Cthulhu 40th Anniversary Starter Set is available now. Carries an MSRP of $24.95. Christopher asks, do I need another Call of Cthulhu starter set? Probably not. But do I want this? Absolutely. I will mention this is not all that much different than the original starter set that came out. It's got new artwork. Yes, there is some corrections. There are errata. But I don't think if you already own the original starter set, which came out just a few years ago, that you need to pick this up. But if you don't have it and you've ever been interested in Call of Cthulhu, then by all means, this is a fantastic value. I reviewed the original print run because they were actually, Chaosium was advertising this as a second print run and then decided, you know what, let's call it the 40th anniversary starter set. Anyway, I did review the first print run and gave it a 9.5 out of 10. It is that good. And if you're kind of curious, check out the review. It's a video here on the channel as well. Let's see. Kevin R. Smith has popped on in, mentioning it was really fun reading about the dice included in the original Call of Cthulhu box set, which is also arriving following a successful Kickstarter. I don't think that's in stores yet, but I do believe Kevin, I believe, was a backer of that Kickstarter. I think they are arriving to the backers. So if I remember correctly, I think Kevin mentioned in chat in a previous show that he had received his. So Christopher says, yes, love those handouts. 245 Trioxin mentions that they just started Alone Against the Dark. And yes, I have run Masks of Nyarlathotep. Yes. One famous Call of Cthulhu adventure I have not had an opportunity to run is the Beyond the Mountains of Madness. I had it. I owned it. I don't have it anymore. I had, what was it? 3rd edition Call of Cthulhu when that came out. Never had a chance to run it. Wanted to, because it's actually one of my favorite Lovecraft stories. It's more along the lines of a novella as opposed to a short story. Flaming Heron says, yeah, about to say I'd buy 3 sets of dice for every Kickstarter I purchase if they offer dice, because Flaming Heron is a dice collector. I am not. I mean, don't get me wrong. I got tons of dice, but I don't consider myself a collector. When companies send me news pieces about dice Kickstarters and that, I'm like, like, yeah, they're dice. Yeah, some of them look kind of cool, but they're dice. So Christopher says they're probably going to be running Horror on the Orient Express. Sweet. He received it from his wife as a birthday gift. Nice. And Zero Theory is with us in chat tonight as well. Available in print and PDF from Melsonian Arts Council and Exalted Funeral and DriveThruRPG is Academies of the Arcane for the Troika role-playing game. Here's what I know. While it's intended to support Troika, this new book is a comprehensive toolkit. It'll work as well with any game where you might need magical schools, students possessing horrifying cosmic powers, and manipulative and petty faculty members. Within you will find robust tools to create your own magical school, locations, classes, staff and student body, as well as new tables for calamity and magical overload. How you choose to use these items to define your game's tone and setting are entirely up to you. The book even includes advice for changing around the terminology, descriptions, and structures to fit your preferred wizarding world. This book includes 36 new student character backgrounds, as many as the core Troika book, over 90 new spells befitting a wizarding academy, over 20 enormous tables for generating school uniforms, school houses, teachers, locations, events, classes, and more. 50 pieces of fabulous original art throughout. And this is bound to very high standards of bookbinding, so this should last you a lifetime. This 89-page hardcover with PDF is available through Exalted Funeral here in the U.S. for $35, or you can grab the PDF alone over at DriveThruRPG for $14. Yes, I've never looked at Troika. It is another kind of a new school Renaissance role-playing game that a lot of people enjoy. I've heard a lot of good things about it. I have just never had an opportunity to take a peek. And I believe there is a lot of supplemental material for Troika as well. English, Jeff. Although I don't think Troika is really an English word. Isn't that a Russian word? Still, I should be able to say it. That Troya. Oh. All right, my final news piece. The third book for Scion, second edition, is out in print and PDF from Onyx Path Publishing. Here's what I know about Demigod. The gods made your world in one way or another. They made you. Every god was once mortal. You stand at the threshold of humanity and divinity and cross over into the lands beyond the world. As the Titans rattle their cages and you confront your own mortality, you live with your myth and you shred your mortality. Win or lose, the people will speak of your legend forevermore. Scion, Demigod, presents the next stage in a Scion's evolution with new pantheons, expanding upon setting elements and systems, and giving story guides and players a guide for massive set-piece fights in the story path system. It also gives guidance on how to play through the requisite milestones to reach godhood and claim your character's birthright. This book includes divinity dice, collateral damage rules, and dominion boons to showcase your character's power. demigod level expansions for birthrights, 5 new pantheons, Mesopotamian, Incan, Polynesian, Slavic, and Mongolian, all suitable for parentage of your scion, and story guiding advice on how to play the ascent to apotheosis and becoming a god. The 235-page hardcover is available as a print on demand from DriveThruRPG, starting at $39.99. There is, of course, the high-quality hardcover, which, if I remember correctly, I think it's $69.99. And you can also grab just the PDF alone for $19.99. And, of course, Scion is part of the World of Darkness, which I know almost nothing about. Almost nothing about. Vampire the Masquerade, yes. Everything else, not really. But I do know that this is a relatively popular system, and I know a lot of these people out there are really digging the story path system. I know Sammy has done some reviews of Onyx Path Publishing releases, and she's really enjoyed them. She's a huge fan of that beneath what they came from beneath the sea. Tessie Trekkie's with us, as well as Bane 122. So Bane is asking, is the new starter set for Call of Cthulhu the same as the old one, just with new art? Yes, and some errata and corrections. And I think we have like new full color character sheets. But that's pretty much it. The adventures are the same. Everything's still the same. The interior artwork on the adventures is all the same. Nothing has changed there. So, as I had mentioned before you popped in, I don't really see a need to pick up the new starter set if you already have the first print run. But if you don't have it and you'd like to learn more about Call of Cthulhu, it is strongly recommended that you pick it up. Tessie Trekkie says they came from series is the games are a hoot. The horror one that they've got, they came from beyond the grave. Looks pretty interesting. And they are releasing some supplemental material for it and some adventures as well. I thought that was kind of funny. It's kind of supposed to be like a 70s exploitation horror film, sort of. So, Zero Theory says they came from the Late Show. No, that was a different role-playing game way back. That's taken me way back. All right, that is it for the news tonight. Of course, I was just talking about DriveThruRPG. Don't forget, the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to go visit DriveThruRPG or DM's Guild, Storyteller's Vault, Wargame Vault, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a small portion of that sale. And all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do add up and help keep thegaminggang.com around. Also, if you like this video, if you dig the channel, if you find gaminggang.com to be a valuable resource, hell, if you like what we do, you can always swing on over to paypal.me/gaminggang and making a small donation. And there are a lot of people out there who are using those banner ads, popping over to PayPal. Thank you very kindly. Really do appreciate it, because I don't run Kickstarters to keep me around. I'm not always like out there like, hey, you like what we do? Well, you're going to start paying me. Pay me. Tessie Trekkie asks, isn't DriveThruRPG normally doing a summer sale? Yes, it'll be in July. It's their Christmas in July sale. So I believe that rolls up After 4th of July. So I can't tell you exactly when, but it is on the horizon. In fact, I mentioned it on last night's show that tends to be one of the best sales. That and then the Black Friday. They usually do like a week for the Black Friday. Those are usually the two best sales for DriveThruRPG because you're usually at about 30% off. Christopher says the Call of Cthulhu set is the Malibu Stacy with a new hat. Yay, just don't need it. Flame Heron says just link your Cash app, Jeff. I don't have a Cash app. So yeah, I don't have any Cash apps. My Cash app is PayPal. So that's like when I have advertisers and stuff, they pay me through PayPal. That's it. All right. So that's it for the news. Anyway, wanted to mention I got my badge for San Diego Comic-Con, my press pass. So that came today. It was kind of interesting because normally we get a box for that year's Comic-Con. There's usually a pin in it and like a little brochure in that. And I knew that was not going to be the case this year. But usually the pass is actually plastic because I thought they put a chip in it. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there was a chip in it for like the past 2-3 Comic-Cons. Not this year. It's just paper in like a little plastic badge holder that you'd see any place. So I was like, wow, saving money. And I can completely understand it because for the past 2 years, okay, they did have sort of like a mini Comic-Con. I think it was last November, but it was really small. So there hasn't been a true San Diego Comic-Con in 3 years. So I could see them cutting back on stuff. So we're going to find out. We'll see what happens. So kind of cool. Everybody's still going. There's 4 of us. So myself, my brother Greg, our friend David, and of course my best friend Elliot Miller is going with, which was very, very surprising. It was like, what? You want to go? We can't get you a pass. It's like, Tessie Trekkie says, San Diego Comic-Con is one of those bucket list items, that and Gen Con. I'll be the first to point out, I love Gen Con. Gen Con is my favorite convention. And even going back to when I would go to Origins, Gen Con, Comic Con, once in a while I'd go to some smaller conventions. Gen Con's always my favorite. I always feel a little sad at Gen Con when I'm leaving on Sunday. It's like, oh, another Gen Con's coming to an end. Because it's just, I've said it before. I don't think I've been to a convention where more people are having fun. Now I'm not saying that they don't exist, but I never run into people who are pissed off or, oh, I'm in a big hurry or anything like that. Maybe when the exhibit hall opens in the morning, they're all running in there to go buy something. Maybe then. Otherwise, everybody's getting along. Everybody's just, into their own stuff. You don't have people sitting there going, D&D sucks, 5e sucks, Magic the Gathering is shit. You don't run into any of that. So, Tessie Trekkie says, flights from Australia are the kicker. Yeah. I tell people all the time, if they live in California or if they're interested in driving to San Diego, I'm not saying from like the Midwest or the East or anything like that. There's a lot at Comic-Con that's outside that you don't pay anything. You don't need a badge. You've got all these empty storefronts and that are just left empty so that they can be rented out for Comic-Con. Amazingly enough, it's pretty incredible. Almost every restaurant has some sort of installation from Sci-Fi Channel, Amazon Prime, Netflix, all different stuff. So I tell people, if you live in California, we run into a lot of like drivers for Uber, because of course we usually will be taking Uber to the convention and then back to the hotel. Not this year though, because we're only a mile away. And we're always telling people that they're like, yeah, I've never gone in and checked it out. Like, hey, go downtown, go hang out with some friends or your, spouse, whoever, your significant other. Just go and check stuff out. It doesn't cost you anything. And it is packed. If you don't like crowds of people, don't go anywhere near Comic-Con. People complain at Gen Con how crowded it is. And it's so funny because it used to land, well, it probably will again, but not this year. Gen Con's usually the week after Comic-Con. So it's like we get just a few days to recharge our batteries and then boom, going down to Indianapolis. And people will be like, oh my gosh, it's so crowded. And I'm like, man, look at all the room. I can move. Flaming Aaron says, hey, as soon as they build a bridge across to America, he's there. Of course, the price for gasoline would be as much as the airfare. Yeah, the airfares right now are just ungodly. We're flying on passes. We're flying on United, and we're flying on vacation passes because my sister-in-law works for United. My brother works for Southwest, but he's on leave right now. He's on a medical leave, so he's not back yet. And I'm very concerned if we're even going to get to San Diego. So we're going to find out. Bain says, people love their tribalism and can't help but praise what they like while also putting down stuff they dislike. Yeah, you don't see a whole lot of that at Gen Con. Everybody's just having a good time, getting along. It's very, very cool. All right, so as I mentioned previously, we're going to be taking a look at the Castle Keepers Guide for Castles and Crusades in just a moment. But first, it is time for a brief intermission.
Right this way, just step right in the center ring, our top attraction, you get your money's worth. Come see the dancing elephants, the biggest thing on wheels. Ah, the little boy's first circus. I wonder how it feels. With wonder does this magic land fill his widened eyes. Look now, there the zebras, this show's a real surprise. The polar bears arrive on cue, on bikes they sally forth. They're mighty cool, but then it's true, they're from the frozen north. And now the clowns will stop the show with your most kind permission. A rocket blast so you will know it's time for intermission.
In the old mail car was fearless Fred, guarding a precious sack, when the bandits appeared from everywhere, our hero to attack. The fight was over, just like that, and up spoke fearless, sack in hand.
I'm awfully sorry we had this spat, but this is Toddy, the chocolate drink that's just grand. Yes, Toddy, the delicious chocolate drink in a can, does taste grand. Ice cold or steaming hot, Toddy hits the spot with everybody. During intermission, at our snack bar, or in your car, see how much better those hot dogs or that popcorn tastes with Toddy.
Delicious.
Next question. What do you think of Wilkins coffee?
It's wonderful, delicious.
You see, friends?
Now pay me the $10.
Long ago in colonial Virginia, a tempting new recipe was created. They called this tasty dish Smithfield Barbecue. And today, that famous James River Smithfield Barbecue is still being prepared right there in Smithfield, Virginia, lovingly simmered in old-fashioned open kettles. The fame of James River brand Smithfield barbecue has spread over the entire world, so that today, happy folks in every land are enjoying that old Virginia dish, rich in tender meat, tangy with barbecue sauce. Getting hungry? Well, we wouldn't just tell you about Smithfield barbecue. Step up and enjoy one at our refreshment stand right now. When you bite into that luscious, lip-smacking Smithfield barbecue sandwich, you'll find out for yourself why James River brand Smithfield barbecue is a favorite everywhere.
Yeah, I guess it's nice to see Uncle Ben get that extra work for Smithfields. Man, it's just so cringeworthy. Oh. Then they show everybody around the world, and they're all white. Even the Asians are white. Yeah. So Tessie Trekkie says, why Dixie? Why Whistling Dixie? Exactly. Dan Kellogg's with us in chat. Welcome, Dan. Says they're just a couple of miles from the James River right now. I heard it's very nice. I heard that's a very nice area. I'm, not insinuating anything about the people who live in that river valley. Just saying Smithfield's James River barbecue. Commercials. All right. So tonight I am going to be diving on in and taking a first look at Castles and Crusades Castle Keepers Guide from Troll Lord Games. It's written by Davis Chenault, Matt Golden, and Stephen Chenault. And artwork is provided by Peter Bradley and Sarah Dreamy Walker. The 352-page hardcover. I think it's more than that. I think it's like 368 pages. I will double check. Carries an MSRP of $49.99. You can grab just the PDF alone over at DriveThruRPG for $19.99. Do want to point out, stay tuned, because I'm going to tell you how you can get into the running to win all 5 of the core books, although 2 of them really aren't core books, but they are the 5 books that we are taking a look at this week from Troll Lord Games for Castles and Crusades. You'll be able to score a set of all 5 in PDF, so stay tuned. I will talk about that in a bit. So let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got the Castle Keepers Guide. So something I forgot to mention last night. In fact, I was going to, and then I forgot about it. You know how I get carried away with stuff. I love how this new print run for the Castles and Crusades 3 core books are all homages to AD&D first edition. So here's the player's handbook. So we got the 2 thieves up there stealing the eye. Then we got the other characters down here. We have the Ifrit holding the woman, just like on the cover of the Dungeon Master's Guide. And then with Monsters and Treasure, it's from the Monster Manual. Of course, far better artwork than you'll find on the original. But I thought that is very cool how they are straight up homages to the AD&D books. All right, so let's take a look at the back here. Do want to mention the fine folks over at Troll Lord Games were kind enough to provide me with these review copies we're going to be looking at all week. But neither I nor anyone else affiliated with Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share my coverage with you. These days, it's important that you know that. I'm also going to be staying picture in picture up here. So as we take a peek through, we're going to end up cutting off the upper left portion. Got to point out, one of the strange things is, and I noticed this on last night's player's handbook, The text isn't so easy to read on the back of these books. It kind of fades into the artwork. So let's see if I can actually read this. What lies herein? The Castle Keeper's Guide includes a host of material for the role-playing enthusiast, from world building to dungeon design, adventures in the air and water, equipment, transport, including wagons and ships, managing non-player characters, alternate spell use and cost, equipment wastage, weather, movement, large-scale war, monsters, treasure, death, and more. Bane says, man, I really dig that cover. That's a good-looking monster. Yes, nice. All right, let's jump on in. Of course, I'm not going to be taking a peek at each and every page here, but I do want to give you a good feel for what's inside this book. Now, we were taking a look at the player's handbook for Castles and Crusades last night, and it appeared to me that we were looking at essentially all the rules you need to play in that one book. Now, I would take a guess this is going to expand on those rules, but it looks more like this is game master facing information. Yeah, see, here we go. It is 368 pages, not 352, which is the indication from DriveThruRPG, saying that's how long the PDF is. But anyway, I was going to say, it looks to me like we're going to see just a lot of really good information for the Castle Keeper, the game master in this case. And it looks kind of interesting. So let's jump on in. So we've got our acknowledgements. Let me grab a sip here. One thing I had noticed is because I've got the Panasonic GH5 Mark II shooting overhead, and I've not gotten the dummy battery yet. That's coming on Saturday. And of course, I turned it on to make sure everything was in focus. And then what I did on last night's show to make sure that the battery didn't run out is I turned it off. I forgot to do that. I started the show and this camera's been on all this time. I'm not recording with it, so it's not actually using as much juice. So it's supposed to have about 2 hours of power in the battery. So we will find out. Hopefully it doesn't just turn off. I'll be pissed. So Kevin R. Smith says, I don't know. The first edition player's handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide didn't look too bad. The Monster Manual, the first one to come out, has that amateurish look like original D&D in color. Yeah, it is pretty bad. Coco B is with us in chat. Good to see you, Coco. Mentioning the Trampier Player's Handbook cover is hard to beat. Yes, that is. I actually have that as my screen on my phone. So it's funny because remember, I tell you all the time, I was not a big D&D player or dungeon master. Okay, so we've got our introduction. So we've got expanding characters. So it's talking about some alternate attribute generation. So it looks like we're going to focus on player characters here. Height and weight, age. How well the races get along. Okay. Expanding on your character races. So it's actually a discussion of creating new races for the game. So it's not just saying, oh, here's some new races. It's the discussion here is creating your own. That's kind of cool. Talking about magic. So I believe we've got some alternate ways of utilizing magic. It's not necessarily Vancian magic. I want to say there's like a compendium that's available for Castles and Crusades that has tons and tons of optional rules. One of the things I mentioned last night when we looked at the player's handbook is I have always heard that Castles and Crusades is very modular. It's very easy for you to plug in rules that you want to use and toss out rules that you don't want to use. And I don't think the compendium is a physical book. I think it's only in PDF, and it's supposed to be like jam packed with all these different options for you to utilize. I don't know. Can't remember if it's actually called a compendium or it's called something else. But I think it's hundreds of pages long. All right, so we're still looking at, okay, so here we've got channeling mana. That's usually the other major magic use system that you'll find in fantasy role-playing games is channeling mana, as opposed to like the Vancian memorization. So you usually have like spell points that you can spend. So we've got expanding equipment. That's some pretty cool art. I bet you this is probably the cover from a previous, maybe this is the cover from the previous Castle Keepers guide. Because we saw in the player's handbook, there was an art piece that I know is a cover from a Castles and Crusades book. I think it was a previous print run of the player's handbook. So a few things to jump into. We did have someone mention in chat last night that this, I think we're on the 8th edition, or maybe it's just the 8th print run for Castles and Crusades, that this is all still compatible with the first edition that came out years ago. That things have not radically changed. Zero Theory points out the player's handbook PDF is free on the Troll Lord website. So it is trolllord.com if you want to take a peek. All right, so some non-player characters. So I noticed the little tabs on the side here doesn't tell us what the chapter is. It just tells us it's the chapter. So Kevin says it's probably the 8th printing that they changed the cover art with every printing. And I think they also tweak some errata in the editions, but I don't think they overhaul mechanics or anything like that. So these are all non-player characters. This is all information about NPCs in this chapter. Background and personality. How not to use NPCs. When properly used, NPCs add new dimensions to gameplay. Clever castle keepers quickly learn to use them to enhance role-playing, introducing, moving along, or concluding plot points, engaging sleepy players, building tension, and so forth. The list is almost limitless. When improperly used, however, the NPC can be detrimental to play, if not downright destructive. Abusing NPCs is an easy thing for the castle keeper to do, even inadvertently, as they make NPCs either too prevalent or non-existent. I think one of the stumbling blocks that most game masters run into early on is an over-reliance on plotting and their NPCs. I think that's a problem that most game masters have to overcome, and especially like if like the big baddie, sometimes it's just the game master is just too focused on making sure to drive the players into conflict with adversarial NPCs that they don't let things happen organically. Also, sometimes when NPCs are part of an adventuring party, game masters can kind of almost like be controlling a character in the party like by fiat, which they shouldn't be. They should just allow the players to kind of control the NPC, except for major decisions. All right, so now we're getting into world building. Now, I do have a codex for the game world we are going to be taking a look at. Yes, Kevin says the famous DMPC. Yep. All right. So taking a look at this here. So we've got different landscapes, it looks like. So we're getting the world setting. Huh. That's kind of interesting. So it appears to me that this book isn't necessarily saying, oh, hey, utilize our game world. This is more about the Castle Keeper creating their own. So that's kind of interesting. Because we do have a gazetteer that I will be sharing a standalone video on Thursday. I'll be taking a peek at that. How to build a culture, physical world and art, communities, single dwellings. This is pretty wild. This is mighty interesting. This is not your typical game master facing guide. I'll tell you that right now. And that appears to be a good thing. Now, this is also possibly overwhelming for new game masters as well. Crime and punishment. All right, now we get into dungeons. This is chapter 7, dungeons. Talking about light, huge deal. Another aspect in fantasy role-playing games, especially those which are dungeon delving games, is that a lot of game masters let the players off too easily for a lack of light. That should be, if your lights go out, if your lanterns go out, if your light source goes out, and you're in a typical dungeon setting, that ought to be terrifying for the player characters. So, Christopher points out they use NPCs. Oh, so okay. So they recite the bits of lore and complex names that I know my players have forgotten, but they never take center stage. Nah, NPCs should never take center stage. Now, that's not to say that you can't have a scene focus on an NPC, especially when it's someone who's very important to the story. But no, they should not. And that's, once again, that's another thing that fledgling game masters have issues with, is because they invest so much time into creating an adventure, doing a homebrew, which is I know a lot of people like talk sass about published adventures. I don't, because I got to be honest. I personally think a lot of times game masters, when they're creating their own homebrew adventures, just invest way too much into the adventure with stuff that's never going to take place, or they're going to railroad their players to make sure that these set pieces or encounters or locations are dealt with. So Zero Theory says, published adventures are full of great ideas, even if you never run them. I say it all the time. The best game masters out there steal stuff from all different systems, all different games, all the time. It's your game. You make it what you will. And I've been invited to take part in some D&D videos, and I don't want to get too much into it because I'm not positive I'm going to do it, because I am no expert on Dungeons and Dragons, and I never portray myself as some expert on Dungeons and Dragons. And I also point out, I'm the first person to tell you, throw the rules away. If the rules get in the way of having fun at your game table, toss them out. But I've been asked, yeah, I guess it's kind of like like advice for game masters and stuff like that. So, um, I wonder how, the other thing is I wonder how I'll fit in with these folks we're actually, it's a variety of different people who are pretty well established, especially in the world of 5e. And, I get the feeling that I'm going to be on a completely different page. So here we have chapter 8, Air and Water Show. Oh, I'm sorry, Air and Water Adventure. Okay. One thing I will mention as we're taking a look through, and of course I'm skipping pages, not a ton of artwork. I mean, we are seeing artwork, but we're not seeing loads of artwork, which is okay. I mean, you're getting gameable material here. So we have equipment wastage. I don't know if I'm a huge proponent of this. I don't mind like weapons breaking, especially on fumbles. I don't know if I wouldn't necessarily want to track damage to a weapon. I am not necessarily somebody who is a big proponent of a lot of record keeping. Supplies, food, rations, time, yes, I am big on, especially in a dungeon delving game. I am big on that. But do I need to like get down into the nitty-gritty with encumbrance? No. Snore. Weapon wear and tear, equipment wear and tear. Zero Theory says, yeah, damage to a weapon sounds a bit more crunch than necessary. Yeah. Testy Trekkie says, published adventures are also great to use as a base for twists. They've personally twisted Shadows over Innsmouth into the Muppets Take Innsmouth. That's pretty wild. Land as treasure. So are we going to get into a little domain play here? Or are we just talking about land as treasure? Maybe. Well, okay. Yeah, we're getting into domain play. Nice. Telling you right now, this book is just jam-packed. As I had pointed out previously, I had always heard CNC is very modular. It's very easy for you to plug things in and unplug things out. So combat on a grand scale, that's something else that's a bit difficult for newbie game masters. I have probably a lot of experienced game masters as well. I always try to present mass combat more in a cinematic vein, as opposed to sitting there having to make sure, oh yes, oh gotta make all these rolls for all these various combatants to hit and defend, and no, that ain't happening. So Tessie Trekkie said Miss Piggy had an unhealthy obsession with Kermit's legs. So tasty. And now we get into monsters, understanding the monster concept. I think that is another aspect in fantasy role-playing games that can be difficult for game masters to present entertainingly, and that's actually monsters. How to present them different, present different tactics, and utilizing special abilities differently as well. There's nothing worse than having a game session and your player characters have fought through 5 different creatures and they all act the same exact way. Okay, so that's kind of wild. Grenades, rockets, and explosives in the future. Wow, this is very cool. This is very, very interesting. Now it looks like we're going to get into the actual game mechanics, talking about the siege engine for low level, mid level, and higher level. That was one of the things I had mentioned last night I'm curious about And it's something that I've kind of heard through the grapevine that Castles and Crusades is not necessarily great for high level adventuring, which, let's be honest, most role-playing games aren't. So, Tessie Trekkie says they're a great fan of dungeon ecologies, why they're here, what's their goal, etc. Yeah, we were talking about that when I was going through, what was it we took a peek at? Castle Amber last week. And one of the reasons why I dislike Tomb of Horrors is because it's just all funhouse. None of it makes any sense. Why does it exist? So, oh, there we go. There was the artwork that we saw last night. That I think this is a previous player's handbook. So, treasure, too much or too little? I would prefer, especially if you're utilizing a game system that has experience points. I don't mind shortchanging the player characters with treasure of a monetary value if I'm making sure to get them experience points. And as we've seen now, 5e and pretty much Pathfinder 2nd Edition, money really doesn't mean anything anymore. That's why you'll see, oh, if you go off on this adventure, we'll give you 100 gold pieces. It's like, what? That wouldn't have flown in the AT&T days. 100 gold pieces. It's like, I don't get off the couch for less than 2,000. All right. Iron and sulfur combat. Okay. It's kind of interesting. Oh, critical hits. Yeah, we have critical hits, critical fumbles. So I'm taking a guess as iron and sulfur combat is probably more gritty. Flaming Heron says, I think most GMs just focus on the story and making sure the adventure works. I think everything else comes with experience. Oh, yeah. The only way you're going to learn this stuff is to run it, to play. And you got to know your players. You have to have a clue about your players and what's going to fly at the table and what's not going to fly at the table. So, that's why I laugh when, you have these people are like, oh, I'm a professional dungeon master. It's like, get out of here. It's like, I don't know if I'd want to play in somebody's game if they were claiming to be a professional dungeon master. All right. Character death. There you go. That was a good character, too. This book covers a lot. This looks like this is going to be very interesting to read. All right, and then we've got, I think it's called Air Day is the game world. I think that's the pronunciation. I might be wrong. Probably am wrong. I think that's the map of it, possibly. All right. So that is the Castle Keepers Guide for Castles and Crusades from Troll Lord Games. It is available right now. This is the newest print run, and the 268-page hardcover carries an MSRP of $49.99. You can grab it over at DriveThruRPG in PDF for $19.99. And as we've already seen in chat, if you want to get the player's handbook, which I'm pretty sure it's going to have different artwork, I think it's an earlier print run. It is free over at trolllord.com if you want to check out the core rules for Castles and Crusades. All right, let's swing on over to the other camera because I mentioned I'm going to give you an opportunity to win PDF copies of all 5 Castles and Crusades books that I'll be taking a look at this week. So I'm going to have a set of PDFs to give away. So that means we got the Player's Handbook. We've got the Castle Keepers Guide that we just took a peek at. The Monsters and Treasure book. I actually really dig this cover. I think this cover is pretty cool. The Codex of Erde and Gods and Treasure. Or no, I'm sorry, Gods and Legends. So I've got all 5 of these in PDF. All you have to do is be a subscriber to the Gaming Gang channel, and you must comment on each of the 5 videos that are going to be dedicated to each of the books. So if you missed last night's show, it's no big deal. Just go watch it and comment. And once again, it has to be a meaningful comment. It can't just be, I want to win those PDFs. No, that doesn't fly. So that's it. And then I am going to select a winner, and I will announce who gets those 5 PDFs on next Tuesday's live stream. So that'll be July 5th. So check them out. Of course, as I mentioned on tomorrow's show, we are going to take a look at monsters and treasure. I almost said treasures. So Flaming Heron says an absolute bevy of titles. Sweet. So Flaming Heron says, give PDF now. Christopher says they find all the Dungeon Master sound effect boards and stuff distracting. 3D terrain looks cool. Takes forever to set up and break down. They like things simple. I am theater of the mind. Don't use miniatures. I've never used miniatures in a role-playing game. Miniatures games, yeah, of course. So I used to paint miniatures a lot. But no, I find them as a distraction, to be honest. Now, I don't think I'd mind pawns. I don't know. But if you're doing that, then you need, in my opinion, you need to have a mat that you've got you're writing, you're sharing your terrain on and things like that. So once again, I'm with Christopher there. It's like, okay, now all of a sudden you got all this stuff. So I'm more theater of the mind. I do ask my players to let me know, what's their marching order. But outside of that, I don't get too crazy. So, but yeah, I mean, I know there are people out there, they play music and all this other stuff. I don't do that. For one, like I said, I think it's distracting, and I gotta be honest, I would think for the game master, I'd rather focus on the adventure that's going on as opposed to try and make sure, okay, so when do I cue that up? All right, when am I going to play that song? When am I going to play that music? Flaming Heron says, been playing virtual tabletop for a while now and don't know I could go back to not having some form of visualization for where the players are. Yeah, that I can understand. Kathy says they set up a map in minis for a big battle. The rest is verbal. So one of the aspects that I've found, see, thankfully we don't have to worry about the overhead camera battery dying on us because I'm talking into the camera that has a dummy battery in it. For me, now this is just for me. And I just, I have a particular way that I like to run my role-playing games. But I find that when you start using miniatures and things like that for like combat, that combat slows down. And the game suddenly becomes, the focus of the game becomes combat. That's not exactly the sort of game that I like to run. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be some action scenes going on. One of the things when I would run Call of Cthulhu, and I would run really long sessions of Call of Cthulhu, sometimes we would actually start in the early afternoon. Now, this is high school. So, and well, actually, probably till I was about mid-20s. But we might start a session of Call of Cthulhu at noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, run out and get something to eat. Come back and maybe play until like 7 o'clock in the morning. And I always made sure every few hours there'd be some big action scene just to keep everybody awake. Keep them, keep those juices flowing. All right. So that's it for tonight's show. If you happen to like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ding that bell. It'll not only let you know when the Dispatch streams live Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. It'll also let you know when I upload other videos, such as my recent review of The Guild of Merchant Explorers from AEG, and my upcoming first look at Call of Cthulhu Cults of Cthulhu. This will be up this weekend. All righty. So I will be back tomorrow. Once again, we're going to be taking a look at Castles and Crusades, Monsters and Treasure. So if you watched live, thank you very much. If you took part in chat, big tip of the cap. Thank you for keeping me company so I don't feel like a complete doofus. But I know a lot of people out there, you don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Thank you very much. It means a lot to me that you're taking time out of your busy life to watch this goofball. So thank you very, very much. And of course, here's hoping each and every one of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming. Your gang.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.
Oh, hey, you're still here. Well, if that's the case, by all means, subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel by clicking right here. Check out the latest episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch, or find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks for watching.